Here today to talk about a very important topic regarding insurance. And as my guest today, I have one of my premier insurance specialists, Rich Mahoney Jr. from Goddard and Son Insurance. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great that you actually carved out some time in your day to spend with us, and I appreciate that.
No problem.
Rich, maybe tell us a little bit about what you do as an insurance specialist.
Sure. Well, I've been at SB Goddard for 12 years now, and what we try to do is take our clients and make sure that they're properly covered for everything that they have, whether it be car, home, boat, or commercial. You know, if they have businesses, make sure that they're covered for that. We sit down with them, go through their needs analysis, and then determine a program, and then try and find the best company to put it with and for the best price.
So you can kind of act as a broker and shop around for the best insurance policy for a particular person.
Yeah, we have appointments, which are basically like contracts with several companies in the area, and we can go to those. And then, if it's not a fit with one of those companies, we have excess brokers. When we get anywhere from U.S. liability to Lloyd's of London. You know, whatever it takes to get them insured.
Sure. So you have a lot of options,
yes.
Which is good.
Yep.
Since this is a real estate show, and let's talk real estate, I want to talk about the home insurance part of what you do.
Okay.
It's very, an important piece of buying a home is to insuring your home. And, everyone knows the importance of having insurance, whether it's for a car or, like you said, a boat or now even a home. But humor us a little bit. Why is it important to have home insurance?
Well, probably the biggest reason for most people is your mortgage company won't give you any money to buy the home.
That is an important one.
Unless it's insured. So what they have, most homeowners policies have a couple different sections. One being the dwelling, which is coverage for the home. So God forbid the home were to burn to the ground, you'd be able to rebuild it back to exactly where it was. Mm-hmm. The next part is personal property. So you have couches, you have chairs, you have everything that you have in the home, clothes. If there was a total loss, you'd have to replace all of that. There's also loss of use, which is, in this day and age, there's always people home, probably in your neighborhood, driving by. So if you're at home and a small kitchen fire starts, if you can't use the kitchen for a couple weeks while it's being repaired, mm-hmm. It gives you money to eat out. So you can't go to the Ritz every night, but
sure,
it gives you at least go
down to the Capitol Grill and grab yourself a steak for dinner.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then probably the most important. There's also the most important part is probably the personal liability. Typically, it's $500,000 worth of coverage. And what that does is somebody comes in, slips and falls, in your yard, and sues you. That's covered. The good thing about that is it's portable. So, say down the road you get married, have a daughter, and you rent a hall for a wedding. Somebody slips and falls in that hall that you've rented. Your homeowner's coverage extends over to that to cover you.
So it's very kind of important to have.
Yeah.
So when you said mortgage companies won't give you a loan if you don't have this insurance, does this include all these types, or is it just the dwelling? Can you exclude certain pieces of that?
The way most of the companies work is the dwelling is the jump-off point, and you start there, and then everything else is a percentage of that. And it's built into the cost, so there's no real taking it off or minimizing it. Their premiums, the price of it is going to be based on what the dwelling amount mm-hmm. is.
Okay. What is the standard, I guess, coverage amount for someone buying a home, or is there one?
There's no real standard.
Or minimum, maybe I should have said.
What we do, if somebody's looking for a ballpark without us even going out and looking at the home, we take between $150 to $175 per square foot.
Okay.
So if you're dealing with a 2,000 square foot at the minimum, you're looking at $350,000. Mm-hmm. So hopefully I did the math right in my head, but that's for the jump-off point. We have different rating companies that will, Marshall and Swift, you may have dealt with them, and they do like evaluations. Mm-hmm. We input the information in that, and that comes out with what it would cost how much lumber you would need and how everything down to, the last penny.
Absolutely. I would assume that it's very detailed and calculated on your end to
Right.
Make sure you're covering
Right.
the losses.
Right.
When it comes to personal liability, I think you touched on it a little about if someone were to slip and fall.
Yep.
What else does personal liability cover, and why? Can you maybe stress the importance of it?
If you're named in a lawsuit, you can go back to your homeowners and use the personal liability. It's basically your $500,000 cushion, or you can buy an umbrella policy to extend that.
So if I was in a car accident and my car insurance didn't have enough to pay the claim because I maybe inflicted personal injury to someone else or even to myself, you can now go after take it from your home insurance?
No, you'd have to have an umbrella to go over that. It would
Okay.
You'd exhaust your limits on your auto policy, and then you'd go to an umbrella policy, which basically the umbrella goes over both your home and your auto.
Okay.
And they're relatively inexpensive. For $1 million, it's probably under $200 a year.
Sure.
So,
Are there any other reasons besides you can't get a loan and personal coverage and liability that you should have insurance?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Are there any other reasons why you should have insurance other than you won't be able to get a loan and for the personal liability coverage of it?
Just for your own peace of mind. If some people will go out there and they'll buy a second home in cash, and there's no mortgage on it.
Sure.
And they'll say, roll the dice, but that can be a pretty expensive
Right.
gamble to take. So,
Absolutely.
for your own peace of mind, it's not all that expensive if you have, just a basic policy on it. So.
Okay. Well, Rich, I want to kind of transition to more of what the topic of our show is, and the topic is ensuring you can be insured. And it's important because I work with a lot of homeowners, buyers in the area that are looking to buy a home, and they don't know that there are certain things about a home that make it uninsurable or uninsurable.
Uninsurable.
Or maybe just difficult to find insurance for, where you'll
Yeah.
have a higher premium. Clients will walk into a home and they'll see the gorgeous, swimming pool in the back, or a chandelier, and they'll fall in love with the home, and they won't look at some of the other things that need to be in place for you to actually get insurance. And I was hoping we could maybe talk about those things.
Sure.
I know one of these things is near and dear to my heart, and it's dogs.
Yep.
There are certain types of dogs that insurance companies will not give you insurance coverage for.
Correct.
I have 2 dogs, and in fact, I just adopted a second dog this past weekend. And before I went through with the adoption process, I had to call my insurance specialist and ask him if the type of dog that I had was going to be allowed. And thankfully it was. It was a boxer and American bulldog mix. And I thought for sure the name bulldog was going to scare the insurance company,
No.
but it didn't. So I know there's probably a whole wide variety of different breeds that are not allowed.
Yep.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's with different companies, they have different lists. So one company might accept a dog, other companies may not.
Okay.
The main ones that probably all companies agree with are German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, Rottweilers, Chow Chows, and Akitas. And then some companies disallow like Dalmatians. And the reason it is because the stats that show, like, after 101 Dalmatians came out, everybody thought it would be cute to go buy a Dalmatian.
Sure.
And they're great dogs, but they're hyper and they're nippy. So there were a lot of claims put in. So once somebody sees that, it goes into underwriting information.
Sure. So the way they come up with this list is by the amount of claims made on a specific breed of dog.
Correct.
Now, is it just a straight breed, or is it if it's a mix of that breed?
Sometimes if it's a mix.
Okay.
Some companies, you can get away with it, but other companies, if you say, Pit Bull mix,
Right.
It's a lab pit bull mix. They always want to know what the other half
Sure.
is.
That's probably why you see a lot of pit bulls in some of the dog shelters.
And rescues, yep.
The rescues, you're right, because people buying homes,
Right.
whether it's for insurance reasons or even if they're renting a place,
Yep.
Sometimes those aggressive type
Right.
dogs aren't allowed, which is
Yep.
unfortunate because a few bad dogs ruined it for
Right.
the rest of them.
Yep. And there are some companies that will write your home, but you'll have to sign a letter saying that if there's any claims on the dog, they're not going to cover that. So,
Okay.
and there are other companies that will take them or that have to take them because.
Sure. So as a potential home buyer, if you have a dog, it's probably best to first, before you start looking at homes, to talk to your insurance specialist to see if that specific dog will disallow you from disqualify you from getting insurance.
Right.
Yeah. So in addition to dog breeds, what are some other things that might hurt your chances of getting an insurance policy?
Well, you had mentioned the pool earlier. They have typically no problems with pools as long as it's up to code. Like in Woburn, you have to be fenced in, or if it's an above ground, it has to have a gate that folds up and locks. As long as those requirements are met, they're fine. Diving boards, most companies don't have a problem with. A lot of companies now have problems with slides. So,
okay.
And I really don't know the reasoning for that, but.
When I was a lad, slides were popular. Every pool had a slide.
Yeah. But if you drive around now and look, there's
I haven't seen too many slides anymore.
Right.
But that's good because when you do walk into a home and you see a pool, the first thing is, wow, look at this awesome pool. That you don't necessarily think of the challenges you'll have with insurance.
Right.
So it's important to look at the fencing,
Yep.
Diving boards and slides and things like that. So.
Yeah. And other recreation equipment, trampolines. If you have trampolines, a lot of companies don't want, because there's a lot of kids jumping around, they fall off, broken legs, arms.
It's funny that you mentioned trampoline because I just had this situation come up this past week where my buyers are getting ready to close on a home and they're getting an insurance policy. The insurance company found out that there was an old trampoline in the back of the yard. It wasn't even an active one. It was covered in bush and trees, but they made them take it down so that they were able to actually get the insurance policy. So in real life, it happens, Guys are ruthless.
Yeah.
No, it's all about safety, though. So trampolines, pools, anything else?
There's knob and tube wiring, which I'm not an electrician, but I have friends who are electricians. We have clients who are electricians. They tell me it's one of the safest types of electricity because you're familiar with it, right?
I've seen it in a lot of older homes.
It's separated, so positive and negative never touch. Where like the Romex and everything that they have now is rolled together.
Sure.
So the new stuff, if you get a mouse or somebody, or just it gets frayed, it just sparks and can either short out or it can start a fire.
Right.
With the knob and tube, the big issue and why they had a lot of claims and why a lot of insurance companies don't want it is because in the older homes they didn't have insulation, and the knob and tube would run up in between it. So they would pump insulation through that, the cellulose stuff that they throw in there, and now it would heat up, and that's where the fires would start. Or you've probably seen in a lot of attics, it runs up the ceiling, and people thought that's a great area for storage, so they take a metal hanger.
Absolutely.
And they'd connect the circuit.
It just makes sense,
Right.
You have, a wire in between two knobs.
Right.
Hang your clothes.
Why go buy storage boxes?
Absolutely.
When you can just
It's
throw
all
it
about
up there?
saving money too.
Right.
So.
Some other things that would, condition of a roof, and these are all things. Even with the knob and tube, you have home inspectors come in before you do a buying.
Right.
You can talk to a home inspector, get a contractor, or go to your real estate agent and see if they have a preferred contractor, and you can get quotes. So say you're going in, you're going to buy it, and you're going to rehab it in the first month or 2 months. A lot of companies will insure it with the knob and tube in there, provided they see a quote for it being repaired within the next 60 days. So that's one way around it. The other way is if it's not going to be able to be taken care of, there's the FAIR plan, which you can go out and it's basically not guaranteed insurance, but they don't turn away
Right.
too much. And the FAIR plan is all pretty much what's all on the Cape.
I have a house listed right now that has knob and tube wiring, and we've had several buyers interested in purchasing the home, but have walked away because of the knob and tube wiring, because the challenges they were going to have with insurance, and because the cost of updating the house from knob and tube to the Romex to the more updated wiring it was just too costly.
Right.
It wasn't a smart investment for them.
Yep.
So it happens, and in New England, there are a lot of older houses, some homes that were built in the 1800s still.
Yep.
A lot of those still have knob and tube wiring. And like you said, it is thought to be pretty safe until you start resting it up against, insulation or putting a metal hanger on
Yep.
it or, other things. I've also heard that an age of a home can kind of disqualify you from getting insurance. Is that necessarily true?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't disqualify you. A lot of the companies, like especially the mutual companies around here, that are just based in Massachusetts, like the older homes, just because they know how they were built. Some of the newer homes, when they're put up, if they rush through it, there's a lot more like wind claims, siding coming off, water getting in.
Sure.
Whereas the older homes, it could be a little bit more expensive just because, like some of the ornate detail, when you walk in, you see like all this hand-carved wood.
Right.
A lot of companies, if you want that type of detail, you'll have to charge more for that.
Sure.
If they just want a basic staircase instead of something that was hand-carved, you
Right.
can go with a standard policy. But that would, as far as being uninsurable, it's age really. A factor. The wear and tear on it, though, if you have a house that was built in the 1800s and the roof hasn't been replaced since the 20s, then it's probably not going to be.
Well, let me ask you this. Some of those 1800 homes have the old slate roof, which a slate roof lasts a long time.
Right.
And especially in some of these older Victorians, you see a lot of them have this slate roof,
Yep.
but there's no issues with it. Would that disqualify you from getting insurance?
No, they'd want to make sure that you updated it, because you can have pieces of slate break off and slide out. They'd want to make sure that those were repaired and sealed.
Right. So as long as the slate roof was still intact and
Yep.
functional and no leaks were occurring,
Right.
you shouldn't have any issues.
Correct.
Okay. What about lead paint? I know in Massachusetts, a lot of homes, they say they don't know about lead paint in the home, but you can generally assume a home built before 1978 probably has a chance of
Right.
having lead paint. And I know it's a big issue, but is it an issue for insurance companies?
Yes. It's asked on every application, and typically, now in Massachusetts, you can't sell a home unless you have the lead certification letter, right?
Right.
So if it's a new purchase,
It's not that you can't sell a home, you just have to disclose the presence of lead-based
okay.
paint. But I'm thinking more on the lines of insurance. If if it's known that lead-based paint, like for instance, I have a buyer that's buying this home now that it's known there's lead paint in there,
right?
And they're concerned. Are they going to have challenges getting an insurance policy? Because we know the lead paint is there, we know exactly where it is.
Yep.
Would that be an issue?
Some companies will steer away from it. Most would want to know that you're going to encapsulate it or get rid of it, and they also may want to know if there's going to be young kids in the home. If it's an older couple buying it and they're going to take care of it, it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. I want to talk quickly about flood insurance. In flood insurance, we could talk probably a long time about it, but in Massachusetts, flood insurance it's pretty expensive, but it could be other places as well, but specifically here in Massachusetts, flood insurance, maybe there's some myths about it that if you're near water, that's the only time you need flood insurance, but that's generally not the case. I wonder if maybe you could touch on flood insurance.
Sure. It's I'll give you a personal example. I lived in North Andover for 8 years, and we were right next to the mighty Shawsheen River, which is basically just like a little trickle.
Right.
And there was a flood there in 1936, I believe, and there had been nothing since. And sure enough, the Merrimack backed up and everything flooded back, and we had those Mother's Day rains.
Sure.
I think it was 2005, maybe. And we flooded, and we had 7 feet of water in the basement. So FEMA came out, and they're the ones who actually regulate the flood policies.
Right.
But what a lot of people don't know is you have to get this to get the home, but the only thing that's covered in the basement is anything that's permanently attached to the home.
So your personal items are not covered?
No. So washer and dryers, not covered. Basically your furnace and your hot water heater, and if it gets as high as the electric panel, that's covered. But other than that, I lost a nice pool table, a washer dryer.
That is a shame.
FEMA works with you. The flood insurance counts once it hits the first floor, and you can buy contents, but the limit on the flood insurance is $250,000 for the structure, and then you can get contents, $10,000, whatever you want to get.
Is there a way to find out if you're in a flood zone? Because it's not as apparent as you might think.
Right.
There might be a little stream, but there might not. It might be close, like a mile down the road.
Right.
Is there places people can go to find out if they're in a flood zone?
If you go to FEMA, you can look up they have maps on there, much like the plot maps in the city. And you look to see if your property is in there. It's not going to be, it's not exactly clear. It might look like you're close, and
right.
But when you go for a mortgage, they'll know. But there's different zones where you can, if you're not in a flood zone and you want to get flood insurance just because you want to feel safe,
right,
it's not that much money. Where I was, being in a flood zone, my property was on it, but my house wasn't on it.
Right.
But it was still pretty expensive.
Because there are different levels of flood insurance, zones. Like you could be in a really high, priority flood zone,
right.
Or the best way, someone could just pick up the phone and call you and say, Rich,
we do have.
I'm thinking of buying a house. Can you tell me if it's in a flood zone?
Yep, we do have a program where we can just plug in the address and they'll say it comes
that
up.
Seems so much easier than looking at a FEMA
just
map.
call me.
All right, excellent.
But the other thing I wanted to say about it is FEMA also works with SBA, and if there's a loss like we had, they'll come in and they give out low to no interest loans. So if people didn't have the stuff from FEMA, they can get that.
Oh, good.
So it's a stopgap for them at least.
So it's important, when you're buying a home, to make sure you do kind of a checkup and say, hey, is there any pool in the backyard that is improperly fenced, or any trampoline, or is there knob and tube wiring in the home? And your real estate agent should be able to kind of point all these things out to you as well. You don't want to waste your time, trying to pursue a house that might not be able to, get insured, or at least, talk to your insurance agent and see if these are going to be issues before you, start spending money on a home inspection and, go through the process. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about condo insurance, because in this area, condos are prevalent. In condos, you have two types of insurance. You have a master insurance policy, and then you have your homeowner's personal coverage. What's the difference? How do they work together?
Well, to form the condo, you have to have the condo documents. And those will have in there spelled out whether it's stud in or stud out. I'm sure you've heard of it.
I have. Most
of them are probably written studs out, which means that the condo owner owns the walls, the plaster, cabinets on the inside. So if there was a fire, they'd be responsible for that. The master condo policy would be responsible for the structure. So basically picture the master condo policy would build everything up and around basically the guts, everything framed, wiring, electrical, plumbing, and then the homeowner would just be responsible for putting in, the walls and painting, cabinets, and countertops.
Okay.
So the condo policy itself would be, in the individual's name, and they'd have the same thing as a homeowner's policy. They'd have a dwelling amount, which that would be what you came up with for how much it would cost to put the walls back up.
Right.
Personal possessions, the loss of use, and there's also personal liability on there as well.
So when you're buying a condo, it's good to kind of check the master policy first to see what that covers, because depending on what you find there, your personal coverage could be kind of costly if it's not covering walls in.
Right.
Then,
yeah, it's usually like all in would be everything, and then studs in is
Right, because I believe I live in a condo now, and I believe it's walls in, and my condo for personal coverage is very minimal.
Yep.
If my master policy had said walls out, then my personal policy that I needed to purchase the home would probably have been much greater.
Right.
So I think that's important. So Rich, I really appreciate you joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
This is not always the most exciting topic in the world, insurance, but it's very important.
Come on now.
Well, I mean, maybe because it's exciting for you, but I think it's a very important topic, and I'm glad that you were able to come and share that with us today. Ensuring you can be insured, that's important when you're talking about buying real estate. Always do your due diligence. Work directly with your real estate agent, your realtor, and your insurance company. Make it a team, a team transaction, because you don't really want to be wasting your time looking at some homes that you might not be able to. I mean, you can afford to buy them, but the things that make it uninsured kind of disqualify you from buying it. So, thanks everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions about the show, you can email us at letstalkrealestateshow@gmail.com, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.